Cool. So I'll do a little bit of recap, a little bit of overview. Uh, Recap is that, yeah, Helium sent me this little dev kit because they wanted to see a chicken coop running on Helium. So I threw out a whole bunch of ideas, and that was kind of the one that stuck. So here I'm building a chicken coop. Um, uh, oh, ah, well, that's me. I've got Zoom right over the top of everything, and I can't seem to make it go away. There it goes. All right, so I'm Joey. I'm a product designer. I'm not an engineer. I feel like that's worth saying just because like this is about like me trying to figure out how to build a thing and not about like I'm a previously a full stack dev. Like I'm hacking my way through it. I've done some stuff like this in the past, but largely it's just like I set my mind to something, figure out how to do it. I also wanted to mention that like I know how to build things well. You're not going to see that in this presentation because I'm trying to prototype things, but there's a cabin that I built with some friends, and it's the issue of dwell that we got highlighted in, which was pretty
Oh, wow.
sweet.
Yeah,
Um,
congrats. That's very cool, man.
yeah. Um, so I ordered dev boards like 2 months ago, and they finally showed up a couple weeks ago. So China situation made things a little hard to get my hands on. But once I got them in hand, I started doing all the research, learning about the different LoRaWAN libraries. Ended up settling on the Elmic library, which is very cool. Um, and just sort of did a lot of reading. Eventually hit compile and sent it to my board, and everything worked because I did my research going into it. So that was pretty exciting to get that to work the first time. And I threw this in the Helium chat on the Slack channel. So that was pretty exciting just to get that board going. The only work that really had to happen, short of like finding the right example code and things like that, was just making sure that it had the right pins assigned for this particular uh, TT-Go board, this little tiny guy. Um, but yeah, after I had this working, I got to start thinking about actually building a chicken coop. So a while ago, I had taken apart a copy machine, and there are a million cool parts in a copy machine. I'd say if you ever get your hands on one, like totally take it home and spend the weekend like tearing it apart. I've got like 2 dozen stepper motors, all sorts of gears, rods, clutches. Like if you want to build a thing, it's a good place to start. So I pulled these mechanisms out of a box. This one on the left ended up being the one that I decided to go with for the chicken coop. Um, and so I, from there, hacked together a really ugly scaffold. This is why I preface this by saying I do know how to build things well. This is built out of 2 pieces of an IKEA shelf that I had to cut off and some other scrap wood. But I really just wanted to create a test bench for thinking about a chicken coop, um, or namely a chicken coop door. And so you can see I've brought in that rod on the top, which is handling the gear. There's a little spool of wire on there. Um, and so the hardware side of this is really just thinking about how to get all this stuff to attach. And then I can start focusing on um, the end goal, which is like, I want an iPhone app that turns on and or opens and closes this chicken door. So I got the gears attached, got this thing running. That was super easy. It's just a DC motor. Of course, with a DC motor with no encoder on it, I'm going to end up needing end stops. So I pulled some optical interrupt switches out of the same box that the copy machine um, generated for me. I never used an optical interrupt switch, so I had to do a little bit of reverse engineering there. So you can see the serial feed. Just an exciting evening when I able to get that reading the way I wanted to. First column is digital, the second column is analog. So I was just trying to understand really what was going on with that switch there. And then wrote like a nice little function that only turns on the optical. If you're not familiar, an optical interrupt switch has an LED and a receiver. And I was like, well, the LED doesn't need to be on all the time. So I turn the LED on, read the value, and then turn the LED off. So saves a little bit of battery power that way. So in my configuration here, I've got it plugged right into the rails, but in the actual implementation, I'm reading off of 2 data pins. One is my output, one's my input. Um, and then with those, that's basically all of the electronics. From there, it's just starting to like wire everything together. The relay is managing my heavy duty power for this 24-volt motor. I'm not going to run the motor at 24 volts. I'll probably run it at like 6 because it's a chicken coop and it doesn't need to be fast. But I'm just using the pins on the chicken or on the relay to do it forward and backwards. So sending lighting up one relay to go forward, lighting up the other relay to go backward, basically. And then this is from this weekend. I've got it all put away now because I had to do my real job. But this is it just running through a cycle, moving up and down, letting the gears do their thing.
Oh,
So
that's great,
it's
man.
pretty fun. The cool thing is this guy's got a spur gear in it, so there's no forcing it down or anything like that. You've kind of got to depend on the motors to do the work for you. And you can see that that interrupt switch in there, kind of at the top, so that it'll run into it at the top, and then there's another one down here. So there's your interrupt switches. So I can kind of read the state of whether the door is open or closed based on those two. And then, yeah, Elmic, great library. It's got this loop, but I couldn't figure out for the life of me how to like make anything else happen outside of the sending a command every 60 seconds. So I finally got around to asking Travis, and he sent me some prototype code or some example code, and I eventually saw what I needed, which just kind of blew my mind. I didn't think to put anything in the loop next to the run OS loop. I figured I wouldn't. You don't mess with the OS, but here, like, sure, you can just throw stuff in there and put in an interrupt, and you're good to go. So at this point, I've got the code to where I can press a button and make things happen while still managing the whole LoRa stack, which is pretty cool. And that's where I'm at right now. My next steps, get the firmware together, get the stuff going into AWS, which I'll probably have a little bit of questions for because I tried that and it broke things for me. And then build a super simple iPhone app, which, you know, no crazy thing there. It could be a web app or whatever. And then harden the hardware a little bit so that it doesn't die over a winter. And then, yeah, this is an opportunity for me to extend the Helium network in a county that has no Helium network in it right now. So that gets things out in some kind of rural areas, and they live up on a hill, so it'll be a pretty good coverage, I think. That's it. That's my whole presentation.
Man, that's fantastic, man. No, that's great. That's very cool.
I'm going to ask you some questions. I saw that you said next steps. I guess your roadmap answered some of my questions. I was wondering, so when for now, you are relying on visual confirmation that something was closed or open, right? So in the future, I'm guessing that you can live in the city and you can have those coops somewhere where you don't have visibility and you don't have a camera. Is it possible to get the state when with some sensors that it really is closed or open, or any function that you did that it was confirmed back to you using Helium network?
Yeah, I could dig into that a little bit. I want to track the time that it takes to open and close the gate. And then if I detect that I haven't received a signal that the gate has closed, I want to be able to at least send out an error. It's like, hey, the motor's been running for a little too long. Similarly, the state when it hits those optical switches or the end stops, I'll know whether the gate has opened or closed, and I'll know whether that matches the intended action. And again, if I'm not reading a value that I expect there, I'd want to be able to throw an error. But yeah, the idea that from an end use standpoint, I want to be able to pull up this app or web page or whatever it is and see is the gate opened or closed? My parents have this conversation every single day. It's like, are the chickens in? Are the chickens like? And so like they're getting older. I think it would just be sort of a fun thing, like to get this really to the point where they don't have to think about it. It can be completely automatic based on sunrise or sunset, to just do that. But yeah, for the first pass, I just want to be able to have an app that represents the state of the door, and then allows you to change that state. So.
Do you think if it's possible to think that each hen, chicken, can have some kind of sensor that you know that it's really in or out?
Yeah. Let me pull up something. I've been I've been all over AliExpress lately.
And I'll tell you later why I'm asking those questions.
Yeah. No, I had the thought. I'm curious to hear what your reasoning is, but I found the funniest thing on here, which is
Joey, while you're looking for that, SparkFun did an RFID tag. They basically put RFID tags on Frisbees, and then they had the detector where if it went past the detector, it would like register an event.
So you could, it would be like Quidditch, like Harry Potter.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure somebody did dress up like Harry Potter. Yes, let me see if I can find that.
This was my
helmets?
They are chicken helmets. This was my best AliExpress find of the weekend. So you could certainly imagine an RFID tag on the chicken helmet.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
That's for when the sky falls, I guess, yeah?
Yeah, right. The thing that I love is they're all photoshopped onto the chickens.
Yeah. Oh, and blue, yeah, and ducks.
Yeah, no, that doesn't discriminate.
Those helmets are just, aesthetics, nothing functional, no sensors inside, right?
They're $1, so I don't think so. Yeah.
Not yet.
I was asking